Good afternoon or good morning if you happen to be on the West Coast, and welcome to today's webinar entitled An Introduction into SAP SuccessFactors Employee Central. Simplify and enhance HR processes with SAP SuccessFactors Employee Central. My name is Rihanna Thompson, and I will be your moderator for today's presentation. Today, Illumity HCM is happy to have you all join us for part 4 in our talent management series. This is an ongoing series covering a variety of topics in talent management. As many of you know, parts 1 through 3 are already available online to view. Today, we are joined by Rebecca Murray, Managing Partner of our SuccessFactors practice. Before handing it over to Rebecca, I'd like to take care of a few housekeeping items. This webinar is designed to be interactive between you and our presenter. So if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to type them out into the chat. However, in the interest of time, we will try to answer all questions during our Q&A session. But if you happen to have any issues throughout this broadcast, feel free to type out a question and I will be happy to help you rectify that as soon as possible. We will hopefully have time to get to everyone's questions at the end in our Q&A session. With that being said, I'd like to hand it over to Rebecca Murray for today's presentation.
Thanks, Rihanna, and thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm excited to present to you this overview session of SAP SuccessFactors Employee Central. It's actually one of my favorite topics to talk about, so I'm glad you're able to join us today. Just a little bit of our agenda. We'll start with some quick introductions. We'll get right into the basics of what Employee Central is, and then we'll talk about how Employee Central can be used for clean and valid data and how it can be used for self-service and workflow functionality. And then I'll move us right into a live demonstration so we can see the solution in action. Just as a little bit of background, as Rihanna said, my name is Rebecca. I also go by Becky. I've been working with organizations for over a dozen years, helping them put systems in place to optimize their HR processes. So very excited to be walking you through today's presentation. Illumity Group has a special segment or division for SuccessFactors implementations known as Illumity HCM. We're built up of industry knowledgeable experts, folks who have been working either on the HR side or the SuccessFactors side for multiple years. So we're a good group to have as part of your team. We look forward to answering any questions or assisting you with any projects that you may have in the future. Okay, let's start by discussing the basics of SAP SuccessFactors Employee Central. This is what we will be taking a look at today in the live demonstration. For those of you who aren't familiar with SuccessFactors, just a little bit of level setting. It is a cloud-based HCM solution, and it covers everything that you might need, soup to nuts, to help you manage your employees and their experiences. The solution is cloud-based, it's scalable, so as your organization grows or shrinks or expands into new geographical spaces, this tool set's going to be able to keep pace with you. On this screen, we have a snapshot of some of the different features and functionality of the SuccessFactors system. Whether it's a component of talent management, competencies, people analytics, or the core HR piece that we'll be looking at today. All of these pieces are built upon the same data platform, and you can choose to use one or two pieces or multiple pieces together in tandem. And of course, the more different features you use, the more data is exchanged across that platform. So something like a performance score can drive a compensation award. Someone who goes through onboarding can be immediately housed within our core HR solution. So there's that continuous flow and exchange of data across all these different functional areas. It's really quite impressive. Today we'll be focusing on that core HR piece. The entire solution is embedded with guided processes and a friendly user interface. We'll have a look at some of those guided processes today and how that will simplify the user experience and the different use cases that you may propose to your employees and to your managers. And then finally, our entire solution is supported with mobile functionality. So as employees have the need to make an address change or a time entry, perhaps put in a leave request, all of these things can be accomplished using our mobile application, which we co-develop with both Google and Apple. So lots of ways for employees to interact with this system, either using a laptop, a desktop, or a mobile device. And for any employees who are not using our mobile application but still have a mobile device, all of our sites are mobile optimized for their use. So you'll even be able to access our sites through your mobile device without the mobile application. Okay, let's start taking a look at Employee Central. It's our terminology for a core HRIS system. Many of you might refer to this as a master data system or a master record system. And we are going to keep employee records for all of your employees, different types of workers as well. Perhaps you have some contract or contingent labor, perhaps you have interns, apprentices, that type of thing. All of those types of employees or workers can be stored within our Employee Central system, each one with different designators to help us differentiate their employment type. I think one of the things that's really neat about Employee Central in particular is that we provide compliance and localizations across 99 different countries. That means the ability to have national IDs appropriately formatted and validated, addresses appropriately formatted and validated, but even some more specific things like country-specific data fields. In Germany, we would store things like religious affiliation. In Canada, we're storing First Nation affiliations and healthcare IDs and province. In the United States, we're recording things such as equal opportunity employment designations. So all of those different local specific data fields that are required to keep your organization in compliance, we deliver for 99 different countries. And as those compliance data fields change or they're updated, we make those updates for you in the system directly. And that helps ensure that you're always in compliance regardless of where you operate or where you might expand to in the future. We also deliver our system in 42 different languages, which makes it easy for employees to be able to interact with the system regardless of where they are or what language they speak. Let's look at some of the key features that help differentiate our solution. First off is effective dating. Now, I'm not going to run through all of these, but effective dating I feel is a key one for me to highlight. This is what allows us to store not just an employee's current record, but all of their record changes from the time that they're hired into our organization to the time they leave our organization. So not just top of stack data, but every job change, pay change, address change, and all of those different events are dated within the system. And that allows us not only to see a record of those different historical changes, but also to report on ranges of time. So to pull out someone's pay progression over a period of time or someone's job progression over a period of time. It's really very impactful. On the whole, we like to manage the system using what we call position management. That's the idea that every employee is slotted into one particular role within the organization, and that role has certain assignments associated with it, a particular work location, a job type, perhaps management or reporting responsibilities. And when an employee leaves that position or that role, we know within the system that we have a vacancy. And that's a way for the system to tell us where we need to hire or fill vacancies. So we keep track not only of the employees that you have within your organization, but the open positions or the vacancies that you hope to fill within your organization. On the time side, we provide time off functionality as well as time cards. So the ability to have an hourly timesheet for the recording of time. We're going to provide an entire library full of reports. Some are global reports, some are specific to local countries. They could be in row column format, they could be in dashboard format, and we also include for you tools to create your own reports. The entire solution is supported by our mobile application, and that lends itself very well for the use of employee and manager self-service functionality. And that's something that we'll pay particular attention to in today's demonstration. Okay, let's talk about why a system like this is important. I think, if you were to look back 20 years, even 10 years ago, HR had this kind of view within an organization as being transactional in nature, that we kept the records and we paid people and that was enough, we could call it a day. But those of you on the line who are in the HR space, you know that there's so much more to your job than just being a transactional entity, that you are being called upon more and more to provide strategic information or insight into the organization. Not just headcount reports, which are of course important, but also perhaps information about bench strength and depth of that bench strength, or movement within teams when someone creates a vacancy and how people shift around and how that management strategy or organizational structure may be altered. And more you're finding yourself responsible for compliance-related reporting, perhaps in areas that you're not overly familiar with. And having a solution like Employee Central is going to solve all those problems for you. And ultimately, at the end of the day, allow you to move from being a transactional division within your organization to being that strategic advisor within your organization. And how do we go about doing that? Employee Central is actually going to help get us there by driving good, clean data. When we think about having a system, the system is only as good as the data that we can get out of that system. And so we're going to build different rules and operating processes and guided processes within Employee Central to help drive that good data. So that fields that need to be entered in as a date or a text value are actually entered in as dates and text values. That certain fields that need to be validated for a certain format, such as the national ID, can be validated for that format. In a country where you have no idea what the formatting should be, SuccessFactors is going to take care of that for you. We're going to provide lists of drop-down boxes and selection sets so that employees and managers using the system only choose from values that relate to the work that they're doing. We're going to default values in so that a manager creating a transfer request doesn't have to know every single piece of data in order to transfer the employee, but through the use of propagation and driving different dependent data fields, that form is going to fill itself out as the manager starts using it. And all the while supporting all of these types of data changes and these data entry points with workflows, so that people who need to be informed of changes are informed, and people who need to be in the loop for approvals or verification are certainly in the loop. And one of the nice underlying foundational principles of Employee Central is that HR administrators are alerted to bad or inconsistent data. So if something happens to get by one of those checks on the user side of things, HR administrators are alerted to perhaps a gap in data or perhaps an inconsistent value in a particular record, so that that information can be corrected and entered in a complete format. So this is just a screenshot of what some of those pieces look like. We will look at this in the system together, but on the left-hand side, you'll see an example of some of that national ID formatting. That's the United States national ID, the Social Security number. You can see it's appropriately formatted for that particular country. Behind the scenes, we maintain that formatting protocol for 99 different countries. Same with the addresses. You can see examples of 2 different country formats in one particular record. So the ability to have kind of multiple country formattings within a single record. And then on the right-hand side, that record, first and foremost, starting with that effective date for when something is going to change. We can backdate something, current date something, or future date something. We have the ability to mark certain fields as required. Just like if you were shopping online and you leave the credit card box blank, it's going to come back and alert you. our record will do the same. So as we're gathering information from employees and from managers, we're not ever submitting an incomplete record. And then you'll also see examples of particular box formatting around that date, and then drop-down lists so that employees and managers are selecting from preset values that we present to them. All of these will help improve the user experience, but they're also going to translate into good, clean data within your system. Let's talk a little bit about self-service functionality and workflows. Self-service functionality is one of those things that's been making its way onto the scene for the past 10 years or so. Some organizations adopted it early on, others are still looking to adopt it. But what we have found, and those of us on the data side know, that employees and managers know their data better than anybody else. No one knows an employee's home address better than that employee, and no one knows what type of job or schedule an employee should be in better than that person's manager. So being able to solicit that information directly from those users means you'll have up-to-date and accurate information, hopefully, within your system. Now, it used to be that people would email you or fill out a form and send it via intra-office mail anytime a change needed to be submitted, either on the employee personal data side or on the job side. Some of your organizations may still follow those processes using personal change request forms where you fill out an email or submit some type of ticket. But that just goes to someone who then has to read that information and re-enter it into a system. And so I like to think of self-services as being that medium to collect the data and also enter it into the system by the person who owns that data, the employee or the manager, and then someone on the HR side or in an administrative capacity can still oversee that process through the use of workflows. So here are some common examples of self-services. On the employee side, we see things like address changes, direct deposit information updates. On the manager side, we're looking at things like job transfers, pay increases, perhaps a promotion that involves both a job change and a pay change. And of course, these processes, as I mentioned, are overseen with notification workflows. So on the workflow side, just the ability to notify people who are involved in the process. Perhaps a job change or promotion requires a certain level of approval. Perhaps an employee data change, someone in HR just needs to peruse it to make sure it's okay before confirming it in the system. We can have different workflows in the system trigger based on different types of changes or different activities. And those notifications can go out to inform different people of a certain activity or ask them for their approval for a particular change. And those workflows can be different for different divisions or departments or different types of employees or levels of employees. And they can even be scenario specific. So perhaps a pay change of less than 3% does not require an approval, but 3% or greater does require an approval. And perhaps if that promotion hits 5%, it needs to go through 2 levels of approval. So we can have these situationally based workflows in our system. And ultimately, that means that you don't need to be afraid to allow employees and managers to use self-service, because the system is, 1, going to have those formatted data fields for you, but 2, going to have these workflow processes to make sure the proper people are reviewing that information and approving any types of changes. And so you can see this is an example of a guided process on the left-hand side with a job change. We've got our effective date in there, and you can see we're changing this employee's position. The old value is scratched out in gray on the bottom, and the new value is highlighted in red. And then submitting that particular job change on the right-hand side triggers this workflow approval request. It's going to the talent team first for approval. Nancy Nash, the business partner, can contribute a conversation to this particular process. And then at the end, when it's finally confirmed, Carla Grant's going to be notified about this accepted change. So you can have different types of participants within this guided workflow process. All right, enough of me talking. Let's get into the live demonstration. I'm just going to switch over systems for just a moment and we can take a look at the system live. Perfect. So on my system screen, you should see that I am logged in as Maya Cooper. She's going to be our demonstration user for today. This system is branded with my company's color scheme and logo, but of course this would be specific to your particular group. For those of you who are currently running SuccessFactors in some capacity, this screen probably looks familiar to you because all home screens kind of start off in the same similar fashion, where we are presenting to an employee all the things that are relevant for them right in front. And this screen actually generates dynamically for Maya. It knows what activities she has to do, what's pending her approval, or what training courses she needs to take, for example. Because she's a manager and wears a little bit of an HR hat, she has some of these quick views related specifically to employee data. They're all dynamic, so she can actually drill into each of those different dashboards and see the data behind those representations. And as she scrolls down a little bit more, she's presented with information about company updates. These are specific to her job and her location. And underneath that, we see employee self-service and manager self-service. And this is where we'll be focusing a lot of our attention in today's demonstration. Under employee self-service, she has the ability to update her profile, quickly navigate to key areas in the system, look at her time off. We can see her next day off is tomorrow, and she has 14 vacation days to be used. She can manage pending requests that are sent to her and then activate her mobile device. Underneath that, the next block down in the My Team section, this is for manager self-service. Maya happens to be a manager, so that this block of the screen is presented to her. If she were an individual contributor, this piece would just not display. But here we're able to see some announcements. We happen to have an upcoming employee milestone. Jeff Hill has a work anniversary today. So that's a nice reminder for Maya as a manager for one of her team members. We also see the ability to manage her team. You can see she has a 7 here for 7 employees. 6 of them are direct reports. 1 is a matrix report. And that 7 is in red because 5 of them, you can see with red bars next to their pictures, have tasks that are overdue in their to-do lists. And this is a nice feature for a manager to be able to come in and not only manage their own tasks, but when they click on this particular box, to be able to come in and see what items are pending for his or her team members. And if these items are overdue or coming due soon, we can click on this nudge button and it's going to generate an email notice from this manager to this employee, reminding them to complete their work. Now we're also seeing some notifications on the side about Gordon. He happens to be out at the office, so she knows not to expect him in today. And then because Maya is Jeff's manager, you see this take action button here in the top right-hand corner. And this is something that you'll see throughout the system for a manager to quickly take action on a team member. And right from here, she can launch a guided process, perhaps changing his job, initiating a termination, going in and generating some documents or forms on his behalf. So really the ability to view quick information about employees from here, but then directly take action right from this particular management box. After that, we have a team absence calendar. This allows Maya as a manager to see her own team. You can see this is her and her peers represented here, but then also to jump over to her direct reports. And this is a scrolling view calendar, so you can scroll forward or backwards in time and have different glances, day, week, and month. She also has the ability, depending on her security authorizations, to drill down into her roll-up reporting structure. So employees who report to Armando and report to Jeff, she can drill down within their organization to see their absence calendar as well. It's a nice feature, especially if you've got a lot of folks who are working from home nowadays. You're not necessarily going to see someone at their desk, and that doesn't necessarily indicate an absence. And having a nice team view like that is certainly helpful as a manager. After that, we of course have the ability to manage pending tasks. So any workflow, any workflow notifications that were sent to Maya that require her approval will be pending there for her. And I actually think I have them set up here at the top instead. So those are going to show whether that's a pay change, an address change, a relationship change. Any of those items will be here pending for her to come in and take some approval action, or to monitor their progress if for some reason they were sent back for review to another participant. And then finally at the end here, we have the ability to look at reports. So the ability to come in and view some quick reporting information about our team members. One of the things that we're now starting to see is that reports are valuable more than ever, not just on the HR side and on the leadership side, but on the individual manager side, to be able to come and look at a headcount dashboard to see how many people are within their organizational structure, how many people are within their area of responsibility, and to be able to have some quick numbers about that. And these particular dashboards are also available for consumption right on the mobile device. So being able to pull these numbers up right from your smartphone is extremely helpful. And we have a whole series of these different dashboards and layouts that are available for you to use. This is standard. You also have the ability to modify them or put in your own custom tiles and create your own dashboards as well. Okay, let's start going and looking at some of the key features of Employee Central. I'm actually going to start with the org chart. This is one of my favorite places to start because it gives a nice visual representation of Maya and her team. And it also tells us some key information about her team members. So again, this is Maya. This is her job title. You can see this 6-41 that represents 6 direct reports and 41 reports within her area of responsibility. Those of you who are counting along the bottom might be saying there are 7 people here, and you are correct. Lauren is a matrix report, and you can see that's represented by a dotted line. And that's a piece of functionality that we can turn on and off depending on what we want to show or display on our org chart. Another thing that we can see as we drill into the organizational structure is Samuel Keys, who happens to be a contingent worker, along with Deborah Peterson, a contingent worker within her own team. So being able to represent contingent workers who are, supporting or augmenting your workforce is extremely helpful, I think. Again, that's an option that we turn on and off with that display setting, but being able to have a consolidated and concise team view is extremely important. Now, as Maya looks at her own team members, as they're listed here, you can see she can click on any of them to get what we call a business card view. That's going to give her a snapshot of information about her team member, his contact information, where he's located, job title. And then because Maya is Armando's manager, we have this take action drop down here in the corner. And that is similar to the take action button we saw on the home page on the management tool, that she can come right from this org chart and again, initiate a guided process or jump to different areas within his employment record, review a goal plan, that type of thing. But primarily here, looking at the ability to perhaps process a transfer or a promotion, initiate a termination, all right from here, right from the org chart. I do want to hop over one more level. We have a few different types of org charts. This one here is the people-based, but I'm moving us over now to the position-based org chart. I know a lot of us on the HR side of things, it's easy enough to think about people, but sometimes we need to think about the position. So this is the concept that every employee has a position or a role within our organization. And sometimes they are occupied, like this one here, this VP of Operations. Here's Maya, she's our incumbent holder. But then sometimes they are vacant. And those vacant positions are things that we don't see on that people-based org chart. So being able to come in and have a team view to show not just currently filled positions, but vacant positions as well. And these little indicators that you're seeing on some of these positions indicate whether someone is set to be hired here, whether there is someone who has the ability to return to this position, perhaps they're on a long-term or extended leave, and then whether or not a requisition has been issued and approved for this particular vacancy. And if you happen to be using SuccessFactors recruiting, you can generate the requisition right from this screen here. And it's going to take this position information, this information describing this particular role, and automatically populate that into your recruiting requisition. So as a hiring manager coming here and looking at a vacancy, I don't need to manually enter data to request a requisition. I can just come here to this particular profile, click on my actions bar, and click Create Job Requisition. And it's going to take this data as well as some of the data behind the scenes and push that over to the recruiting side of our solution. Okay, last org chart view. This is another important one, and I just want to highlight it here. I find that different people consume data in different fashions or formats and like to have different views of things. So I'm just quickly pulling up for you what we call a company structure view. And for many of you, this may be what you traditionally think of when you think of an org chart, not just the people and not just the positions, but the actual organizational structure where they reside. So here we're looking at a structure view. We're starting at the corporate level that's headed by Jordan Robinson. We can see the number of people who are assigned to her business unit and the number of positions assigned to her business unit. She can come and click on these indicators to get a listing of these particular employees. We can also see that there are 7 divisions below her business unit. And for example, we have the IT division, which is headed up by Merton Wells. And underneath that division, we have 14 departments. And you can see at each level, we see not only the head of each unit, but also the number of people and number of positions assigned. And we can actually drill down into those particular listings or those particular entities to find out more information. For a lot of folks, when they think about an organizational chart, where people are located, the roles that they perform, and how they relate potentially to other teams, this is, for most folks, a very nice view to display that information. Okay, let's go back to our home page and dive into some additional functionality. The next thing that I want to walk you through is the employee profile or the employee record. And this is where we're storing the bulk of information about our employee as it relates to their personal information as well as their employment information. Personal information, of course, is anything specific to the employee that they came into our organization with. Name, contact information, bank account information. When they leave our organization, that data remains theirs. Employment information is anything that describes the employee and their role at our company. So their job, time calendars, employee classifications, salary or pay wage, all those different types of things. When the employee either moves jobs or leaves our organization, those data fields either change or stay here within the system. So we are logged in again as Maya Cooper, and we are looking at Maya's own record. So this is an example of employee self-service, where she can come in and view the key different areas of her record, and in some cases, potentially make changes based on what self-service capabilities we've allocated to her. And it is possible to have different levels of self-service for different groupings of employees across your organization. Perhaps you want to permit some groups to make some data changes that you don't permit another group to make, and that's absolutely fine. Now, as I scroll down here, looking at personal information, you can see there's a global information section. And for Maya, being an employee in the US, we are looking at some US specific data fields. In this case, we're tracking things like veteran status and challenge status. And there's a whole library of data fields for the 99 different countries that we support localizations for. And so we have the ability to come in and for each country indicate which fields we want to be able to track for employees in those particular locations. A lot of my customers find that this is just the most helpful bit of information, because I could be an HR administrator or working in an HR center of excellence somewhere over in Europe, and I could be called upon to update a record for an employee here in the US, or to process some type of data change, or to provide support. And as that particular employee, I don't have to be an expert in what fields are required for a particular country that I'm helping to support, because the system is automatically going to prompt me for those data fields and give me a drop-down list of choices. Let's take a look at what this actually means within the system when it comes to national ID. I'm just going to click on that pencil information button for a moment and put in some new entries here. You can see for the US, we've got Social Security number and national ID dropdown. There's no other choice here for national ID card type. Social Security number is the national ID card type for the United States. I only have a handful of our countries turned on in my system for today, so you'll just see a small selection. You'll notice if I come over here for Canada, we now have social insurance number and the proper formatting for that particular entry. If I come down to Australia, I have another for tax file number, particular formatting. I come down to China, I actually have two selections here, an old format of resident identity and the new format. And you can see that these ID types are different per country and the formatting is different per country. And again, this is something that just comes default delivered within our system, so that anyone entering in a social insurance number for an employee in Canada does not have to remember the formatting of that particular field. It's going to be prompted and asked to be validated against whenever any entries are made. So that is an example of that localization. It's also one of the reasons why self-service is so effective, because the system is going to perform those checks and balances for you. So in addition to personal information and national ID, we're also keeping some biographical information, emergency contact information, addresses, dependents, bank accounts. We have different libraries of these different data elements that you can choose to use. And within each one, we have a handful of fields. And you can choose to use those fields or not use those fields, just depending on what you hope to track. But the other thing that's very nice is that each of these different data blocks has placeholders built in for customer-specific data fields. That means that if you want to store a uniform size or a boot size or a different medium preference or a favorite color, fields that may not be in the system, we have placeholders in these different data portlets for you to store that information. We also have the ability to create your own data portlets to store some specific information. I've got one customer, they are a movie production company, and they store whether their employees would prefer to receive the new video releases as a DVD, a Blu-ray, or through streaming. I've got another customer, they're a brewery, and they track what type of beer their employees prefer because they give out each employee a free case each month. So just being able to track some of that ad hoc stuff, things that right now may be in spreadsheets on your desktop or in your network drive, and you just wish you had a place to put them so that other people could share that information, but also so that you can report on that information. This is where we can put it. Even if there's not a specific place, we have placeholders to put that data. Okay, so this is an example of an employee, Maya, looking at her own records and having some of those pencil fields where she can go in and make some changes to that data. You'll also notice here a data alert. She's put in for some address changes over time, and they are just pending approval. So we can have those workflow notifications on different data fields or data portlets, where perhaps someone needs to go in and review that information before confirming. And it can be a mixed match of things that have workflows and that don't have workflows. Perhaps emergency contact updates do not require workflows, but that address change, as it might impact taxes or benefits or something like that, perhaps you do want a review workflow there. So you can be very specific with the different use cases for each of these different data portlets. I'm going to flip now and look at a record from the manager self-service standpoint. So we are still logged in as Maya. This name drop down here allows her to quickly navigate through her organizational structure, or if she has the ability to do so, just to free type in an employee's name here. But let's go ahead and look at one of her team members. This is Gordon. And as she opens up Gordon's record, she's seeing some information right offhand. His contact information up front, just like we saw on his business card. His out of office indicator, he happens to be off for today. And then we're seeing some personal information, but a limited view of personal information, not quite the same amount of data that an employee saw on themselves. And then it's up to you whether you want to give employees, managers rather, access to change this data, or whether you want it to be read-only. Some of my companies go either way. If you have employees who don't work at a desk, perhaps they work in a field service capacity or on a production line, and maybe they don't use computers on a regular basis. In those cases, some of my customers choose to allow managers to make some of those employee data changes, just because an employee is usually standing at their desk as they're doing it. But as we scroll down, we get into viewing some of the employment information. So organizational assignment, job classification, working time, full-time, part-time classifications. Scrolling down just a little bit further, we get into the compensation section of things. So looking at information around range penetration and compa ratio, being able to see salary history displays and salary positioning views. All of these bits of information not displayed to employees, but just displayed to managers so that they can make informed decisions on how to manage their team. And we do have pencils here to come in and make changes through a guided process. We also have this actions button at the top. And again, this is consistent with the user experience we've been seeing for managers so far, where we can come in and propose some type of job or pay change, or perhaps a job and pay change. But let me go ahead and walk you through this guided process. It prompts the manager as to what change they want to make. And then first and foremost, we are assigning this change a date. The system requires that date so we can keep the history. So let's go ahead and set it for the 4th of this month. And what it is doing for us now is presenting to us the current job information record as it exists for Gordon at this point in time. And what we have the ability to do then is make a particular change that we want to have on his job information record. We don't have to enter this information in from scratch. I think if you asked a manager to enter in some of this information from scratch, it would be a lot of data. Not only would they perhaps not want to do it, but perhaps they don't know all of the different data values. So we're just asking them to make changes or adjustments to the fields that need to be updated. And let's go ahead and take a look at how some of those checks and balances and defaulting of values work in the system. If I am moving Gordon from Atlanta to Chicago, I can click from this drop-down list. Now you'll notice that Gordon is currently in our best run company, which is a US-based organization. When I click on this location link, it only gives me locations that are relevant to that particular legal entity. If you are an organization with multiple legal entities, either in one country or across multiple countries, that particular legal entity selection here is going to drive the values of these different boxes, including location. So if I want to put this particular employee in Hawaii, but this business entity does not have a location there, it's not going to be a choice for me. Instead, I can come in and choose Chicago. And this tailoring of these drop-down lists is one of the key ways that our system makes self-service so effective, because it's coming in and performing these little checks and balances and restricting the values for particular users. And you'll notice that when I chose Chicago from this drop-down list, not only did the new value appear here, but the old value appeared scratched out down below. And what's extremely beneficial for that is that it keeps track for a manager of all the different changes that have been made. And likewise, you'll notice that the field next to it updated as well. Because we moved from Atlanta to Chicago, the time zone also needed to update. And we didn't have to rely on the manager to come in and make that dependent change. The system recognized the change and the dependency and made it for us. So again, another example of how manager self-service can be effectively used at your organization is those dependent data fields are automatically updated by the system. So we don't have to rely on managers to come in and fill out every field. Values will be defaulted for us. Lists will be restricted for us, and dependent fields can be automatically updated. And that is what makes self-service within our system so effective. These different checks and balances that are happening in real time right on this user experience guided process. When we are done making all the changes we need to make, we hit our save button here, and it's going to initiate a workflow process. And depending on the changes that we make, it's going to inform HR, perhaps a second level manager, perhaps a facilities manager at the new location. Whoever needs to be involved in the approval process will work on the approval process, and whoever needs to be involved on the notification side of things will receive a notification. So this is one of my favorite parts of the system, because it just makes the system so usable for both managers and employees. And ultimately, at the end of the day, if you're sitting in HR and you're trying to either pull together reports or make strategic recommendations, what you don't want to have happen is that you find out that, Gordon actually moved and went to work for another manager 2 months ago, but no one bothered to tell you. So this is a nice, easy way to get that information right from the source and still to have it come to you for workflow notifications and reviews. Okay, let me go ahead and return to the home page. There's just one more feature that I wanted to point out, and I think this is helpful not only for managers, but for those of us on the HR system administrator side of things. And that is this search for actions or people box right in the top right-hand corner. If I know that I'm coming in here to propose some type of job change for Gordon, I don't have to navigate through the profile or through the org chart, although I certainly can. But I can just come right up here and start typing Gordon's name into this search box. And it's going to give me his contact information. I call it a business card view. And we've seen that in the system as well on the org chart side. And then of course, because Maya, our user that we're logged in as, because she is his manager, she's being presented with this take action menu. So right from the home page, she can quickly come in and type someone's name and go in and propose some type of data change using a guided process. Those of you who are on the HR or system administrator side, you can do the same, searching for different people within your area of responsibility. And the other thing that you can do as an administrator is perhaps you're not looking to take action on an existing employee. Perhaps you want to come in and add a new hire, or add some type of record, or add some type of template. You can start typing in what action you hope to take within the system. And assuming you have access to perform that particular task, the system is automatically going to list out those actions for you, and you can click on them right from there. And so as a system administrator, you're able to get to people and actions extremely efficiently within the system. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and switch back over to our slides. I've got a few wrap-up points, and then we can take some questions. Okay, just to wrap up, I want to reiterate that Employee Central is cloud-based. It's scalable. We have very small customers. I think our smallest is about 22, and we have customers with several 100,000 employees running this solution. You can be in one country, you can be in all the countries. I can remember I went to do requirements gathering for a customer about 8 years ago, and I asked her what countries she operated in, and her response was all of them. And I thought about her business and her organization for just a moment, and I realized she's right, it was all of them. It ended up being 127 countries, which we implemented in. Some of the key benefits of having Employee Service Central is that it's going to help you gather and maintain accurate information. And it's going to do that by having those different controls and validation boxes on the data fields. We can also have rules to help default in values and to help drive data dependencies for those different values. And then finally, the entire system, when we start using that self-service capability, can be augmented with workflows. So as an HR administrator or business partner, you're not removed from the process anymore. Instead, you're acting in kind of an oversight role. You're still able to review the data if you feel as though it's important for you to review. If you still need those 3 levels of signatures for a promotion or a pay change, the system will still gather those 3 levels for you. But now, instead of being done over paper or over email, it's in the system. And we can track those workflows, we can track their process, who hasn't responded, who sent something back for more information, and overall just be able to track all the different types of employee and employee data related changes within the system. So I know that was a mouthful, and I know with it being a webinar, it's more of a presentation than with interactive questions. So I'm going to pause now and take any questions that may be in the chat.
Before we jump into questions, I do want to give everyone some time to type whatever questions you may have for Becky. Becky, I just wanted to thank you again for today's presentation. As a reminder, the PowerPoint deck from today's presentation and a recording will be available to all attendees tomorrow, and that will be sent to you via email. So with that being said, let's get to questions. The first question for you, Becky, is just for a confirmation. Can you confirm that everything being demonstrated here today is a part of Employee Central and doesn't require any additional modules?
Yeah, everything that we demonstrated today is a part of Employee Central. So that homepage that we viewed, that's what we call platform or a foundational piece. That is something that every module has included. But from there on out, the employee records, the self-service notifications, those advanced org charts that we looked at, time off requests, etc. Those are all part of Employee Central.
Perfect. Next question is, in your opinion, where is the best place to start when starting to explore a project to replace an existing or put in a new HR system?
Well, I wouldn't say that there's necessarily a right or wrong place to start. There are usually 3 things that I take into consideration, and so I'll recommend that you do the same. The first is to consider any immediate pain points or needs, things that are keeping you from doing your job or maintaining your department, HR department in an optimized fashion. And I would jot those down. The second thing that I would consider is your company's business calendar. When during the course of the year do you perform certain activities such as performance reviews, benefits open enrollment, compensation awards, those types of things? I sometimes even map them out on a calendar. And then the third thing that I look at is your current system or systems and any expirations or subscription renewals or things like that. And I map those on a calendar as well. So that gives me a little bit of information about what needs you have, when you go about doing things within a calendar year, and then what systems you have that may be coming to an end or terminating. And from there, I kind of lay out a roadmap based on your different features and functional requests. So I wouldn't say that there's any right or wrong place to start, but you can certainly look at some of your business processes and put together a roadmap. If all things are equal and you say, Becky, we have no systems, we have no processes, we don't do open enrollment, and we don't have compensation, then I like to start with core HR, what we've seen today. It provides a nice foundation for other components. And I like to throw in recruiting and onboarding there as well, because they kind of share that same data set, and they connect together extremely well in terms of the flow of data. But that's just a preference. We have had customers start in all sorts of places, LMS first or performance first, and then the year after or 6 months later put in core HR. If your recruiting subscription terminates in 6 months, perhaps we start there because you don't want to have to renew that subscription. Things like that. So we kind of take those 3 key factors into account when figuring out when to start. I know that's a long-winded answer, but food for thought.
Oh, that's great, Becky. Actually, it ties into the next question very well. So if an organization is already running different talent modules within SuccessFactors, how easy is it to add on Employee Central?
It's actually not that difficult. Every customer of SuccessFactors uses what we call the basic profile to store employee information, whether that's core HR data like we saw today, or some auxiliary data, perhaps related to performance management or succession or recruiting, LMS, whatever it may be. And it's that employee basic record that kind of ties modules or data sets together within our system. And so we would just layer that core employee record that we saw today in Employee Central on top of that basic profile. So we would essentially take what you have and just extend it out.
Awesome. So I'm watching the time and we have 1 minute left. So I'm going to say that we're going to end the session for today right here. If you do have any additional questions for Becky, feel free to send us a quick email with any questions you may have. As a reminder, we will be sending out a recording of today's presentation along with the attached PowerPoint deck, so feel free to browse those at your leisure once you get them tomorrow. And we welcome any feedback you have from today's webcast. And I'd like to thank you all for attending today's webinar. And on behalf of Illumity HCM, I hope you all have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you all.